After Sokrat Kirshveng's execution, the guards found a note in his cell which read, I should have died earlier, so I couldn't commit a new murder. Sadly, Sokrat would indeed kill four people until being caught. As a Bulgarian who has lived both in a small, peaceful city like Vidin and in a never asleep big city like Sofia, I can assure you that Bulgaria is actually a pretty chill country. Yes, we do have crime, every country has, but the crime in our country is not that noticeable. Here, crime doesn't happen often, but when it does happen, it's enough gruesome and shocking to leave you disturbed. Sokrat Albert Kirshveng was born in 1882 in the village of Alino to a Romani Bulgarian mother and father of Greek descent. He was born with a slight defect in one of his shoulders. His parents died when he was very young, and the young orphan was sent to Samokov, where he began work as an apprentice and later a journeyman for a local lumberjack, before becoming a master in the trade himself. Kirshveng was considered a dapper man among his colleagues, wearing costumes and the latest Parisian fashion and Viennese bow ties, as well as having varnished shoes imported from Argentina. In 1908, he married Elena Manova in Samokov, who later gave birth to two children, Alexander and Raina. However, Kirchveng disliked the small town life and his job, so he abandoned his family and traveled to Sofia, promising to come back with lots of money. There he met Vangelina Yordanova, a tailor who occasionally worked for the hospital. She immediately fell for him, and she allowed him to live with her in her small house in the modern suburbs behind the sugar factory, unaware that Kirschbank had a family in Samokov. In 1917, he was hired as a security guard at the 10th Military Hospital and thus given a service weapon. While working there, he fell in love with one of the hospital orderlies, Dinka Nikova. She was a young and beautiful woman, but also highly religious, and refused Kirschving's offers for marriage as she knew he was her knowledge married to Yordanova. In response to this, the cunning man devised a plan to get rid of his cohort. One day, Kirschveng returned home from work, seemingly panicking. He explained to his lover that he had stolen a large sum of money from the hospital and that his scheme would soon be discovered. So Yordanova offered that both of them flee from the country, and taking the chance offered, Kirschveng accepted. He instructed Yordanova to write two letters, one to her mother and one to him. In the former, she explained to her mother that she had stolen 15,000 leva from her lover and had fled to Serbia, while in the latter, Kirschvenk had to show it to the authorities and claim that the woman had robbed them. In the meantime, she would actually have to go to Serbia where she would wait for Kirschvenk. He had promised her that they would flee together to Dalmatia where they would live happily, but they first have to retrieve the money, which he said was buried at the cemetery in Malastevsky. On the night of July 12, 1919, the duo took a shovel and spade and went to the burial spot to dig up the loot. Kirschfeng then explained that he was tired from working all day and asked Yordanova to dig instead. The woman, completely unaware that she was digging her own grave, dug for about an hour before Kirshveng had decided that the hole was deep enough. Then Kirshveng took out his gun and shot her in the back of her head, burying her body in the grave afterwards. The following day, the now widower appeared in the hospital with teary eyes, explaining to Nikolova that Yordanova had scammed him and fled with a lover to Serbia. Over the next few days, Kirschfang walked around like an apparition in the hospital, constantly repeating Vangelina flee with a lover. This way, he won over Nikola's love, and she agreed to marry him. However, he didn't tell her that he still had a wife back in Samokov, with whom he hadn't been divorced yet. Instead, he convinced her that his mother was Muslim and offered that they both get married by the Turkish mufti in town. Nikolova agreed, and then both of them got married, accepting the Islamic faith and renaming themselves Shakir and Aisha. Despite his newfound love, the death of his wife and children back in Samokov troubled Kirshveng's mind, deciding that he needs to get rid of her as well. Later the same year, he hired a car driver named Dmitry Tsvetkov to drive him to Samokov, where he told his family that they were going to live with him in the capital. On the way back, near the village of Pancharevo, Kirshveng told the driver that he and Manova were going to walk to a nearby path, and Tsvetkov took off with the children to the capital. Under the guise of showing her his newly bought cherry garden, he tricked Manova into going towards the bushes, where he killed her using his weapon of choice, his axe. After a short while, the driver returned and noticed that Kirschfeng was alone. The man then explained that his wife had decided to spontaneously visit some relatives in a nearby village for 1 or 2 days. Unsuspecting, the driver believed his story and drove him home, with Kirschfeng managing to put the bloody axe in the backside of the man's cart. When they arrived at their destination, Kirshveng immediately went to the police and blamed Tsvetkov for killing his wife. After the authorities found the bloody weapon, the court sentenced the innocent car driver to death and later hung him. Kirshveng then continued to live with Aisha, but soon he got tired of her as well and decided to kill her. He then took her out on a walk towards a path in Gornabanya, and when they reached a suitable isolated place, he began strangling the woman. However, she managed to scream loud enough for people to hear her, and thus police was summoned. Kirschfeng was captured and sentenced to death. However, the judge considered the fact that if the man was executed, his children would become orphans without a dime, and so his sentence was commuted to 17 years imprisonment. During this time, Kirschfeng was employed as a prisoner's lumberjack and managed to financially support his children in this way. Kirshveng was released in 1937 but was left penniless. He then visited his aunt Evtimia, sister of his father, who held a small shop in Sofia's Podayani district, claiming that he had borrowed two leva from her which he wanted to return. The woman took the money, and when she returned to take out some sweets with raspberry flavor to give to Kirschbank's children, He killed her using an axe he had taken with him. Kirshveng then tried to rob the shop, finding only 20 leva, which didn't satisfy him. Because of this, he went upstairs to his aunt's apartment but also didn't find any money there. In one of the rooms, Eftimia's 85-year-old husband, Ivan Zdravkov, was sleeping. Kirshveng bursted into the room, threatening the old man to give him money or else he will kill him. Zdravkov then took out his wallet, showed that he only had two leva left. However, Kirshveng noticed that he had golden pocket watch, an honorary gift from Zdravko's service as a volunteer during the Battle of Shitka Pass. When the man fought back, he was killed with the axe. The bloodied Kirschfang then took the watch and a few other items he thought he could sell, put up a sign saying that the shop would be closed for 10 days, and promptly left. One of the regular customers, however, became suspicious as the shop worked without days off. She contacted the police, who inspected the home and found the two dead bodies. With no clues to whom the killer might have been, one of the investigators noticed that Zdravko's pocket watch was missing and began asking the local watchmakers if there have been anybody who has sold one recently. Eventually, he came across a pawn shop owner who claimed that he had been sold exactly the same type of watch 2 days ago, probably stolen, and gave a description of the man. Kirschveng already had a dozer with pictures of him, and when the investigator showed them to the man, he instantly recognized him. The killer was soon arrested. The trial against the killer with the axe began on February 22nd, 1937. The case brought in a huge crowd of people eager to see the face of the horrible monster. Kirschfeng's attorney was the jurist Milo the Balzamov, who was famous with pardoning every criminal he encountered. The murderous confession to the magistrates lasted 3 hours, in which he admitted to being a sadist and requested the harshest penalty for murdering his aunt and his uncle in law, saying, "Give me it. If there is nobody to do it, I'll do it myself." Kirshveng was sentenced to death by hanging the following day. His attorney, however, hated losing and appealed the sentence to the Supreme Court of Cassation of Bulgaria. Both the appeal and the request for pardon was subsequently denied. Kirshveng was executed on the night between April 13 to 14, 1937, with his only request prior being that he was buried a Christian and that his children never learned that he had murdered their mother. After Sokrat Kirshveng's execution, the gods found a note in his cell written by him, which read, "I should have died earlier, so I couldn't commit a new murder."